Okay, here we go. Thank you so much for joining us for adults. I don't know why it's doing it again. It's jumping ahead of me. Take 3, 4, 5. Thank you so much for joining us for adult socialization and behavior modification. For those that don't know me, I'm Nancy Puro. I am volunteer manager and I oversee our behavior modification program. My co-host today is Lowry Stevenson, longtime volunteer and cat whisperer. Lowry's been part of our behavior team from the beginning and has so much great experience to share. I think you're going to learn a ton from him tonight. So what is behavior modification? Why do we do it? This is a great definition. Some key points we're going to talk about tonight. Behavior modification reduces stress. It provides mental and physical stimulation. It encourages species typical behaviors, and it allows animals control of their environment, and that's so important. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of behavior modification at CAT. So the shelter was a very different place when we first started this program. We cared for between 200 and 300 cats on a daily basis. Each cat was in a single kennel, and our free roam rooms sometimes housed 8 to 10 to even more cats. It was a big job to get them all fed, cleaned, medicated when needed. Sometimes we didn't really have time to get to know all the cats. And for cats with issues, our length of stay was long. Sometimes some cats were there for years or more. Around 2015, several things happened. The 5 basic freedoms were accepted as the standard of care in the animal welfare industry. We're going to be talking most about the last 2 tonight, the freedom to express normal behavior and the freedom from fear and stress. Our cats who lived in single kennels didn't have enough space to express many normal behaviors. They didn't have room to walk around much. They couldn't play. Their food and litter boxes were side by side. At that time, we took a big step and we introduced a model called the adoption-driven capacity. We reduced the number of cats in the shelter. Not quite a thing you think about doing, that you want to reduce the number of cats you have, but we did. We cut the capacity in half. We portaled our kennels and cut holes in them so each cat had at least 2 kennels, if not 3. We reduced the capacity in our main rooms from 8 to 10 to 12 to 1 to 3 or 4. And what that did for us is a lot of things. One, less cats created less stress. There weren't as many cats around them. They didn't have as much to worry about, and it reduced the stress. It gave them space, better housing to participate in those normal species-specific behaviors. That's tongue twister. And it allowed us to get to know the cats better and to take better care of them. The best thing of all, with all of that, we had less behavior issues, less medical issues, and our length of stay went down and our adoption numbers went up. So by reducing our capacity of cats, we actually adopted out more and provided the cats in our care better care. Fewer cats allowed us to focus on the cats that really need it. Columbia was one of the first cats that we trained using a marker or clicker. It was kind of by accident. She was defensive and a little bit scary. And we started out just tapping her kennel and tossing her a treat. She learned to associate that when we tapped, she was going to get a reward. Pretty soon we could tap an area and she would go to that spot. She was moved to a free roam room and would travel all around the room to the areas that were tapped. This training increased her confidence, it reduced her stress, and helped her to make a positive association with humans. Within 30 days, Columbia was adopted. Without training, Columbia probably would have been at the shelter for at least a year. We realized at this point that cats could be trained. At that point, it was not thought that cats were really a trainable species. Dogs were, but cats weren't. And with that training, we can reduce their length of stay. The rest of this presentation is going to be about the methods we use to do that. And first, Lowry's going to talk to you a little bit about how evolution came into play and made the cats how they are today.
Thanks, Nancy. And hello, everyone. So as Nancy said, I want to give some evolutionary background because it's basic to everything we're talking about during this session. Cats are, of course, very effective predators, but also themselves are prey. They're small and they're solitary. So through evolution, they've evolved several suites of behaviors, is what I call it. Behavioral modules or genetic modules are another term used. They've developed these to handle these different needs and challenges. So starting with predators, key behaviors may include stalk, pounce, kill, eat, then maybe have a wash and a nap, but they have to be brief because they have to do it all again and again and again, because cats have to hunt several times a day. Their prey is small. Perhaps one reason that house cats eat so often and why treats are so effective for socialization and training derives from this need to eat several times a day in the wild. So I think everybody knows that cats are only partially domesticated, and these behaviors are still very functional in the house cat. In the house cat, behaviors of the hunt translate to play. So in place of chasing down the mouse, they chase down the ping pong ball. But then they have to eat. This is the reward that the cat needs after a play session, because that's what happens in nature. We can do it with treats or maybe a mini meal. And this is especially important for things like the laser pointer, because the laser pointer, the laser light, is something that they never can actually catch. So we need to positively reward them at the end of the play session with a treat or a bit of food to eat. So in summary, predator and play behaviors are the positive force in a cat's life. It's what they evolved for, and they yield the emotions that they are the emotions that make the cat happy. Now, the evil twin to all this is the cat as prey, and they've evolved compensating behaviors to deal with this as well. They rest in secure high places. They seek out hidey holes. They avoid open areas. If a predator is about, they back off, they freeze, they crouch, they tense. Physiologically, they're ready for fight or flight. And if a predator does see them or is very close, there are two typical responses. First is to go passive, even pretend to be asleep. And this actually does work. Sometimes the predator really does lose interest. The alternative, though, is to go defensive in a big way. Lots of noise and teeth and claws. So an active defense. But the motion behind these responses is the same. They're all driven by fear, which is the dominant emotion. The problem is that in stressful situations, cats can see us as the predators. So keep in mind that the house cat knows they're not going to be eaten, just as they know that the ping pong ball isn't food. But the emotions that accompany these behaviors is still there and remain very powerful. On the one hand, it's positive. On the other hand, it's fearful. So the goal then is to reduce stress. This is the bottom line. Focus the cat on the positive emotions of its predator ancestry. Convince the cat that they are not prey. We are not the predator, and thus reduce fear and reduce stress. So we'll be talking about some of the ways to go about these two approaches for the rest of the session. Next slide, please. So this is just to remind us to say that cats are not kittens. Kittens are at very different developmental stages than cats. They go through several different developmental stages in regards to behavior. Some of the people taking the session now may have taken Mary's kitten socialization course. If you haven't taken it, we highly recommend it. It's excellent. I think both courses complement each other, are complementary to each other, and you can learn from both. The bottom line, though, is that techniques for kittens may not work for adult cats. And in fact, at times it may be detrimental. So keep that in mind. So these behaviors don't occur in a vacuum. Cats do live in an environment, whether it's the wild or the living room. And Nancy's going to talk about this.
Cat is lucky. We have a variety of housing options where we can, where our cats live. We have kennels, cat aquariums, offices, free roam rooms, our offsite adoption centers, the thrift store, and in non-COVID times, Purrington's, and even many of you are here because you're going to take cats into your home as foster parents. If a cat's not doing well in the shelter, the very first thing we're going to look at is where they're living. When determining where to place a cat, we take into account their personality, their tolerance for noises, what kind of hiding spots do we want or not want for the cat, exposure to other cats or animals. Often just finding that right environment can make a huge difference for a cat. We often send cats out to foster and they will be totally scared, fearful, defensive in the shelter. And after even 24 hours or less in a foster home, in a more natural environment, often they become relaxed and show that true kitty personality. So it can make a huge difference, and that's going to be one of the first things that we are looking at. Each housing option needs to have certain things. They need to have a spot to hide. They need to be able to separate out their litter and their living space. Nobody wants to sleep next to their toilet, so we want to make sure they're spread out as far as possible. We need to have toys where they can show those predatory behaviors. In a kennel, it's a little bit more difficult, but we'll have a mouse that they can toss around, something on the kennel that they can bat. They need to show those species, I cannot say that tonight, species-specific behaviors. So they need scratching pads and things they can rub their scent on. Often we'll add a little bit of feel away to help make that adjustment easier. Just remember with feel away, you want to spray it on something and then let it sit for about 15 minutes before you present it to the cat. Room setup. So rooms are a little bit different. We have some more space, but again, we need everything that we talked about in the kennel, but we have some extra consideration. Cats and people have very different views on the world and how they like things. People like things to be put away. We like lots of open space in the middle of our rooms. We like the furniture near the walls. We don't like a lot of clutter or things out in the open. We like things picked up and neat and tidy. A cat, not so much. Think like them for just a moment. They've been living on the streets. They're hunted by people, coyote, owls, hawks, other cats. And they need to have places where they can feel safe and protected. If you're a cat and you're going across a large field that's open, you're going to do a couple things. You are either not going to go at all and you're going to hunker into where you are and stay put, or you're going to take off and you're going to run across that field as fast as you can to get to the other side so that you're not at risk from one of those predators. Think about a different type of field. This one has bushes and trees and a playground and benches and things that we're going to go move through as we go across it. In this case, the cat's going to start off at one and it's going to move to the first bush, and it's going to check things out again, and then it's going to move under a bench and it's going to check things out again, and it's going to go to the next tree. And it's going to be a lot less stress getting across that field in that second scenario. We need to do the same thing for our free roam rooms. In this example, you'll see the Corunda tower on the left is wide open, but the cat is still feeling more secure under that open tower than in other areas of the room. So the situation on the right shows an even better situation. The Corunda now has some draping over it. It's going to be a good, safe hidey spot for that cat. We want to make sure that there are areas in the room, throughout the room, where the cat can move and feel safe and secure. So think about that when you're setting up your foster room, or if you go into one of the free roam rooms at the shelter. Often when we're cleaning there, we push all the furniture back to the sides and we mop the floor, and the cats will be in all the corners of the room. Once we move the furniture back in the middle, they all start using the whole space again. The one thing that you need to think about if you're setting up a foster room is the other side of this fence, and that we also need to make sure that there are not places that the cat can hide, that it can get under, that you can't reach it. Here's some good hidey options. We have, again, another Corunda bed with a towel over it. That one we can get into from all sides. A nice wide box where you can reach in from different directions is good. Things with open sides on both sides are good. Again, you don't want to have to be reaching into a defensive cat right around their face. So we don't want anything with a small hole that you're going to have to reach into. In that safe room, if you have a bed or a cabinet, low cabinet, or a dresser or things like that that a cat can get under, you're going to need to make sure you block those off, or maybe even remove the bed and put it straight on the floor instead of on a frame. Because if you get a cat that goes under one of those areas, then you have no chance of working with them. And so you want to have a place where you can easily access them and not have them in a defensive situation where their fight or flight mode goes into fight. We took an animal that's used to hunting for its food and living outside in a rich, stimulated environment with birds and mice and blowing leaves and all kinds of things, and we moved them inside our homes where they're safer. And it is safer, but it's not always the most enriching life for a cat. So we have to make up for that and make their life enriched. So we need to find ways to engage that predator mode to get them different stimulations for all their senses. And it's just as important as food and water and medicine. So we need to make sure that we're providing that enrichment for the cats. It's needed for all cats, not cats just that are needing on a behavior plan or needing some extra help. All cats should receive enrichment. And the shelter, we're doing it at least 3 times a day, usually more, but it needs to also be happening for our cats in the home. For some cats, the enrichment is not quite enough, and then we're going to look at doing some behavior modification. And Lowry's going to talk about some of the activities that go into that.
So to summarize what we've talked about so far, the basic line is that we need to reduce stress. We need to focus the cat on its positive emotions, the ones that derive from the predator side, the cat's happy side. And we need to convince the cat that they're not prey and we're not the predators, to divert their mind off the fear. So we have to convince the shy, quiet cat on the left and the not quite so quiet cat on the right, that they can be the cat in the middle. They can be the happy, well-socialized kitty that we're looking forward to and looking to adopt into a new home. To do this, we need a plan. So cats are, of course, unique individuals with different motivations and needs driving them. We need to recognize these and plan how to address them. For cats with challenging behavioral issues, there may actually be a tangible written plan. And some of these cats in particular may be the ones that are going out to foster homes. So you'll be given quite a bit of information about that. But just about every cat has needs, and we need to address them. The plans may be informal, they may not be written down, and we may get the information about this cat based on mostly written notes, as well as our own knowledge and experience and the knowledge and experience of others who've worked with the cat, staff and other volunteers. But basic kind of line here is please write up your notes. It's really, really helpful to the people that are going to be following you and working with the particular cats involved. And we'll talk more about the paperwork later, but it is important. Next slide, please. So much of what we do with behavioral cats is to have a conversation. And of necessity, this is done by body language, their body language, but also our body language. And I think we all know that cats read our body language far better than we can read theirs. So basically, we have to start off by ourselves not being tense when we're around the cats. We need to take a deep, calming breath. Next slide, please. So since it is a conversation, we have to know how to speak the language and how to translate the cat's body language into something we can understand. So there are lots and lots of guides and photos and videos widely available online and elsewhere in libraries, bookstores, at CAT, probably in your own libraries at home. These amount to dictionaries of cat language to tell us how we can actually speak it. So how do we begin this conversation? Next slide, please. Well, as with any social encounter, we first have to exchange greetings. And this is just being polite. We do it for any cat. And we typically do it unthinkingly for even the most socialized cat. Just about every cat we meet, just about everyone extends their hand out and their fingers out to the cat and lets the cat sniff it and then typically rub the chin or rub the jaw of the cat. That's just standard exchanging of greetings. It's just being polite. There's some other things to do with the cats, particularly for the ones that are more behaviorally challenged. You shouldn't stare at a cat. Definitely don't stare at them. That's predator behavior. You have soft eyes, you blink slowly. You definitely don't show your teeth, and you stay low relative to the cat. You don't loom over them, stay at the cat's level. And you speak quietly, maybe in a sing-songy kind of voice. Use baby talk, that works well as well. And like I just described, you extend your hand with the bent fingers. Can be an individual finger, a couple of fingers, the whole hand. Jackson Galaxy says this that I'm showing here looks like a cat's snout, and he uses that. So I use it too. I don't know if it's better. It's whatever works. Just ask the cat. So basically all these techniques are just to demonstrate to the cat or reinforce that we are not a predator. And if the cat agrees, the cat will give you a head bump, or actually more commonly, it will rub its jaw on your finger. This is actually more common than the head bump, I think. Next slide, please. So what about the shy or the frightened cat? Well, we use exactly the same procedures as I just described. We have to show that we are the unpredator. The difference in this case is that the cat probably will not give permission. The cat would probably wish that we would just kind of leave. So in place of getting permission, we must introduce ourselves, but politely, of course. So again, we come in from not straight on. We come in from the front quarter. We come in somewhat low. We offer our hand for the cat. Even the most shyest cat will typically sniff it, but maybe then turn away is more common. At which point we actually do the jaw rub ourselves. We actually will just stroke the jaw. If the cat's accepting it, go up to the curve of the jaw, maybe onto the neck or even to the shoulder if the cat's allowing it. Use long strokes or circular motions, not little short choppy kind of motions. Avoid that if you can. And medium pressure. And it often helps the cat if you actually keep part of your hand stable on the cat, like anchor your thumb, say under the back of the jaw while you're stroking the jaw, something like that, or back on the neck while you're stroking the jaw further, or the side of the cheeks, or use the fingers to anchor and use your thumb to actually make circular motions or even long stroking motions. So the cats tend to like the stability that the anchored position of your finger or thumb gives them. It gives them, they know you're there. They know that's there. It's not this looming hand kind of floating around over their heads or over their bodies that they're not quite sure whether it's there or not. This means that something's always there and they're aware of it, and it just gives them a little bit of confidence. If they allow it, you can move on to the back, to the flanks, to the rump. A lot of the cats, if they give you an elevator rump when you pet back there, you've made a lot of progress. But you can move to the head as well, the ears. A lot of cats like their ears massaged, but don't start there, just as you don't start with the body, because again, that's where the predators are going to be. That's where the predators are going to focus on, and the cat would be kind of worried about that if it's just being introduced to you. So you have to start at the beginning and work your way down as the cat permits. Typically do about half a dozen rounds of this, and then go away, come back maybe in an hour or so and do it again. And if you're working at the shelter, try to do this a couple of times during your shift. If you're working at home, it's really good because you have access to the cat morning, noon, and night, and you can interact with the cat, socialize with the cat all day, as frequently as the cat will let you, as the cat wants to do so. So be flexible. So the cats are different, and see what the cat says and respond accordingly. And remember, it is a conversation. Now, Nancy has already pointed out that you need access to the cat. You need access. I want to just emphasize that you need access to the side of the cat to do these things, not just the front, because we do need to approach from the side or the front side to begin with. If you can't approach from the one side, well, just go to the other side. In the shelter, they have a front door and a back door. Just go to the back door, try that. You can always move the bed if the cat's lying on a bed. Sometimes they're not, but if the cat's moving on a bed, just slide it very slowly to get the cat in a better position. And of course, all the soft-sided structures that Nancy showed, the corunda bed and such that are draped with towels or blankets are perfect because the cat has its hidey spot, it has its security, but you can simply move the curtain aside, move the towel aside, and you have access to the cat just about anywhere you want. And that's kind of the whole point of the thing. In particular, Nancy's already emphasized this, that in the foster home, you really have to avoid situations, at least at the beginning, where the cat can hide under like a low bed or under a tight corner of furniture or something like that. You can't do anything in that situation. You really have to rearrange things to make it work. So that's very important. In any case, once the cat is more comfortable, you can persuade it to move from its hidey spot, to come towards us, to move it here, to move it there, or get it to move here and there. There are several tools that are available to aid in the conversation. The top three are food and toys and the paintbrush. And basically what these do is take the cat's mind off their fear, even if just briefly. Okay, that's the shy cat. What about the defensive cat? Well, actually, we use exactly the same procedures here because the cat has exactly the same motivation as the passive cat. It's driven by fear. So the difference in approach that we do is more to protect us than to do anything with it differently for the cat. Especially, we don't want to get bitten. A cat that bites you or that draws blood gets put in quarantine, and the bite gets into its record. And some adopters are a little more concerned if there is a cat that's bitten someone. And also, you don't want to get scratched or hurt yourself. Bites, particularly around the knuckles, can get infected very, very rapidly. So we don't want that as well. So this is just a way to avoid harm to ourselves. The same tools are available here too, food, toys, and the paintbrush. So we need to go to the toolbox to get these tools. You can see there are several items in the toolbox. Nancy will be talking about some of them shortly. The most important here is food, but actually I'm going to talk about the paintbrush first. So just a simple artist's paintbrush is the best. It's useful for any cat, whether it's happy or fearful. In the slide, Maddie is working with obviously a very happy kitten. Fearful cats are interested too. The paintbrush is not something that's organic. It's not something that their ancestors met in their evolutionary past. They never been a paintbrush out on the savannah, for example. And it also works for either passive or defensive cats. For the fearful cat, it puts distance between your hands and the cat. Your hands are predator, can be considered something that a predator is going to grab them with. Even if we're not a predator, we often do grab cats. It's goes with the terrain, I guess. But it gives you some distance from them for that. For the defensive cat, it puts distance between their teeth and our hand. In other words, kind of two different approaches to the same situation. In any case, use a paintbrush exactly like you use your fingers. You stroke the jaw, you work around to the curve of the jaw and so on, except you're painting this time. And you can start off way back. You use, like I said, exactly like fingers. So as you do it and the cat becomes very accepting of it, and it's really remarkable how accepting they are of paintbrushes, how a cat that's been backing it, trying to squeeze itself invisible into a corner will suddenly be just kind of lollygagging half out of its hidey spot as you paint it, as you use the paintbrush. So you can move your fingers closer and closer until after a while you're actually both painting and stroking the cat with your fingers, and then simply remove the paintbrush and continue to pet the cat. Do this several times and the cat probably will be quite welcoming of your fingers. As before, use half a dozen repeats per session, and then go away for an hour, come back and do it again. But as before, cats are different from each other and they differ themselves day by day. So what works one day may not work the next. They may have good days and bad days. So don't give up. It's a case of repeating. Be flexible. Now, the key of the tools, the chief tool, so to speak, is food. Remember that in predator mode, we've seen that the goal is food several times a day. It's positive reinforcement. It's what makes a happy cat. So food is a powerful motivator for them, including those with behavioral issues. And Nancy showed that with Columbia. That's what started her thinking of us as other than predators, started getting her mind off herself being possible prey. Initially, it may be useful only, the cat may respond only for a few seconds, but even a few seconds, that's a start. So it's great. We always show treats and flavorful things, but actually any food may do, even the cat's regular diet. But the reason we use treats and human baby food and cat baby food and special flavorful things is they are flavorful and they are aromatic. So it's especially good to get the cat's attention, while the regular diet may not get their attention quite so readily. But it does work. Regular diet does work as well. The treat of choice now is churu. I think everybody is very familiar with this, both with adult fosters and your cats at home, and of course kittens. Your kitten foster parents use it a lot. I think it's become a favorite because it has very strong flavors and aroma, and it's very easy to dispense. You just rip off the top and start squeezing, and out pops oozes out the churro, which the cats then happily lick up, as shown in the as shown on the package. I tend to like the fishy flavors the best, but let the cats decide. There are several available. The Inaba people would have you use a whole tube for one cat, and that's fine. But remember, it's very rich, and it it is fast food. It's not the best quality. Well, it's probably good quality, maybe, but the ingredients aren't something you want to feed a lot to the cat. You want to kind of limit how much you give. So what I do is typically use just about a quarter tube squeezed out onto a spoon, just like yay. You could use the spoon end, or you can use the handle end. I actually use the handle end because it's easier for the cat to get its tongue around, and just squeeze a little blob there. Cat will lick it off, squeeze another little blob, and so on. Notice my hand is not next to the cat. So if a cat is fearful, or a cat, for whatever reason, you're not that close necessarily. And if a cat is really fearful of your hand, just tape a wooden dowel to the spoon, and that works fine as well. And just like with the paintbrush, as the cat gets more comfortable eating off the spoon, you can move your hand closer and closer till by the end, the cat is licking off the spoon and licking off your finger. Remove the spoon and the cat is licking the churro or whatever off your finger. It works fine. The spoon is also a great way to provide treats to the defensive cat because you're distant from its teeth. But even then, you'll eventually end up with your hands right next to the cat. That's the whole point of it, after all. Hard treats, there are lots of choices, a huge number of choices. Use just single treats, don't use handfuls. If they're bigger pieces, break them into smaller pieces. You don't need to give a lot at a time. Hard treats make excellent rewards for training because they are easily dispensed, much more easily dispensed. But basically let the cats decide and be flexible, as we've said all along. Well, do we even want to give a cat's treats? Make sure they can have them, because some cats with certain medical conditions have to be on prescription diets. And certain of these conditions mean that if they get anything other than that prescription diet, it can be harmful and can completely destroy the whole purpose of the prescription diet and of their treatments. The typical situations where you find a prescription diet are allergies, kidney disease, and sometimes hyperthyroidism if they happen to be using diet as a way of treating the hyperthyroidism. How do you know? Just check the cage card if you're at the shelter. If it's not clear whether you can give treats or not, just check with the staff or check with a knowledgeable volunteer to find out what you can give. In the home, in the foster home, the foster home is where a lot of these cats on special diets end up because they are special needs, and it's much easier to deal with their special needs by having them in a foster home. So Mary will tell you just what kind of diet the cats are getting, and we'll send you home with the diet for that particular cat. And if you're not sure whether you can give treats with the diet, just ask Mary, and she'll find out if she doesn't know. You can always use the cat's own diet as a reward. And so if they're on a KD kidney diet, for example, just give them some KD kibbles as their treats. And most cats will be quite pleased with that. Now Nancy's going to talk about some additional items in the toolbox.
So T-touch is a special method of touch that helps relieve tension and fear by stimulating the nerve endings in the skin. It can be really effective in relaxing a shy or scared cat. It uses a very light touch, which moves the skin and not the muscles, and it's usually done in a circular motion. I'm not sure exactly why it works, but it does. The most important piece is that it builds a connection between the person and the cat. It's really helpful when you're working with the cats if you have a connection with more than just the hand that's petting it. I already talked a little bit about anchoring your finger while you're petting the jaw or things like that. It's kind of the same effect. If you can put a hand around the back of a cat while you're petting it, somehow that connection just helps to relax the cat a little bit more. Or sometimes you can scoot their blanket so that they're touched against you a little bit, having your body connected to it. It's usually the case that if I'm working with a cat and it's not relaxing, that I look at what I'm doing, and if I'm not connected with that cat in more than one way, if I don't have a hand on it someplace, or if I'm not touching it while I'm working with it, I don't find that there is as big a result. T-touch is a specialized training. We have instructors who come in and teach it for our shelter regularly. Right now with COVID, they have been on hold, so we don't have anybody coming in the real near future. But in the meantime, I do have a video that you can borrow if you'd like to learn more about it. It's a really great thing that you can do with the cats. It does work on people as well. They've done it with a lot of exotic animals, and horses are very responsive to it. And a lot of people work with dogs as well. Another method that works with both shy cats or defensive cats is play therapy. It's really important, again, to enact or activate that predator mode in the cats. We want to make sure that they, once they get into that mode where they're focused on their prey, they totally forget about everything else. They forget that they're afraid of you. They forget that they're afraid of that other cat across the shelter. They totally focus and lose sight of everything else. So if we can do this even for a few minutes with a cat, it reduces their stress. We want to have them be able to hunt their prey. They need to watch it. Cats, as Lowry talked about, eat all the time in the wild. Their whole day is spent on hunting and searching and finding mice and killing them and eating them, and then grooming and sleeping. And it's just a routine they go through throughout the day. Our cats need to do that as well. Cats need to be successful at that. So a lot of the process for a cat is spent actually watching and figuring out what that prey is going to do. So a cat may sit back and just watch that wand toy or the mouse toy, and they watch it wiggle and they watch which ways it's going to go. And just about when they're ready to pounce on it, we quit. We take the toy away and we say, oh, the cat doesn't want it, we're done. So cats take a long time in that process of getting ready to play. So make sure you give them the time to do that. Once they do get in that, sometimes they'll give you a little butt wiggle and they get ready to pounce. and they'll chase it and pounce it and catch it. Some cats will want to carry it off to their lair and devour their prey. We need to let them do that. Once they have done that, then we want to replace the toy with a little portion of their food or some treats or a samanaba, and make sure that we're completing that cycle. They need to hunt, catch, kill, and eat their prey. And once they do that, it really helps them to relax. We've had cats in the shelter that attack legs or are pretty aggressive. And we found by doing this therapy with them, they totally stop doing that behavior. It gives them an outlet for that aggression or whatever is driving them to do that. So play therapy can be very effective. It's effective for both the shy cat in making them forget that they're fearful and coming out to play, and the more defensive or aggressive cat in curbing those behaviors as well. Another thing that works with both the shy and the defensive cat is clicker training. I don't know if any of you have done clicker training with your animals. Like I talked about earlier, Columbia was the first one that we did in the shelter. Shortly after that, we started the Jackson Galaxy Cat Positive program, and we had lots of volunteers and staff working with a couple of their behaviorists. And we were teaching cats high fives and sits and stationing behaviors and targeting. And it was really, really fun. Cats can do so many things. And clicker training really builds confidence. It is brain work, so it spends a lot of energy. It wears out those cats that are constantly getting into things and needing an outlet. And it also gives them control. And control is really important, again, for reducing stress. They determine whether they want to participate or not. They know the outcome if they do participate or if they don't. If I don't do the high five, I'm not going to get a treat. If I do the high five, I'm going to get a treat. If I touch the target, this is going to happen. If I do this behavior, I'm going to get rewarded. It's really important, and it really helps with that confidence building. It helps them to move about their space and explore new areas if they're shy. It gives them a job. It's pretty easy. You start out just by associating the clicker or marker. It doesn't have to be a click. It can be a tap like we did in Columbia. It can be a tongue click like that you're just using that sound. It can be a word. It's any marker that you're associating with a reward. So then we're placing that marker to mark certain behaviors. So the cat on the right is starting a high five, and we would click and treat that cat. The one on the right is targeting, touching a target. Once they touch a target, then you can create and lure them into a lot of different behaviors using that same skill. So we could do a spin, we could go to a marker to a station, we could have the cat start to sit up or raise a paw to start doing the high five. I have some videos that I'll send out to you with more information and more directions on starting clicker training. I also have some specific trick sheets or behavior sheets that will go through the steps of training specific behaviors. But basically, we're associating a treat with a marker and then either luring or targeting behaviors so that we can get the cat to do things we want them to do. And while they're doing things we want to do, they're not doing things that we don't want them to do. So carriers, how many of you have a cat that runs when the carrier comes out because it only associates it with going to the vet? we need to make the carrier a safe place. It shouldn't be scary or bad. And one easy way to do that is just to leave the carrier in the room where the cat's living if it's big enough. So if it's in a foster home, if it's in a free roam room, we're going to leave the carrier out and have it accessible at all times. We're going to have a nice cozy bed in it. We're going to put some treats in it, maybe their food. Randomly throughout the day, we might throw a toy in it or lure them in with a wand toy. It can make life so much easier for the foster parent if they're having to bring the kitty back to the shelter for a vaccine or to be checked medically. For the adopter, when the cat goes home, they can easily get the cat in the carrier to go to the vet for its checkup or its booster. It can make just going into the foster home a much more pleasant experience. Think about this. We're getting ready to send the cat home, and we walk into the room with the carrier, and the cat takes off and is hiding in the corner, and we're having to catch it or drag it out or push it into the carrier. And then we finally get it in there, and we're breathing hard and the cat's breathing hard, and we take it down and it goes home for a car ride, which is scary. And then it comes out at its foster home and it's terrified because it's had this horrible experience already for the day, or in its new adopter's home. It's not starting it off on the right foot. If on the second scenario, the cat's used to going in the carrier and we throw a couple treats in and the cat walks in and we close the door and shut it and we pick it up and we put it in the car and we get it home, they open the door and it comes right out. It's used to going in the carrier and we'll give it a couple more treats. It's been a good day. So it can make life so much easier for all involved. And it's such a simple thing to do. So we want to continue to make sure that we have carriers accessible and that it becomes a friendly, fun place for the cat, not a scary thing. A couple other things. There is sometimes when we're going to need to move the cats around in wherever they are, we might have to show them to an adopter, or in non-COVID times, or we might have to move them from one location to another for whatever reason. There's a couple ways that are easier to do this. Most cats don't like to be picked up. Think about what picks up a cat in the wild. Typically an owl or a coyote or dog. It's not a friendly experience. So easier ways to do it. If a cat's already in a hidey bed or a box, just move the whole box or bed to where you need it to go. It's much more comfortable for the cat. They like to feel secure. Same thing, another alternative is to wrap the cat in a towel. They like it, just tuck it in around it, scoop it up, and it's a much more pleasant experience. You can also use some of the cat's bedding. Often if the bedding smells like the cat, it's less threatening. And the other thing is to always turn the cat away from you so the head is facing out, and pick it up from behind. And it's much more comfortable for the cat. If you've ever been to a cat show, all of the judges do that when they're moving the cats. The cats like it better, and their teeth and claws and all the scary parts are away from your potential areas like your face. So it's a much easier way to do that. Sometimes with our shy or scared or fearful cats, you'll see some pheromones and medications on their paperwork. Feel Away replicates the natural facial scent, and it makes cats feel a little bit more secure and calm. We've talked a little bit about it already. Again, you can spray it on bedding, on a hidey. It also comes in a diffuser if you have a small room, and it just helps to calm the cat. If you're spraying it on something, again, remember to wait 15 minutes before you present it to the cat to allow the scent to dissipate just a little bit. Something else you might see, it's a natural supplement. It's called Zilkine or Composure. It comes under a couple different names, But again, it's just something that we'll put in the cat's food, and it helps to make them a little bit more calm and relaxed. It's a natural supplement. It doesn't hurt them at all. It it's just a little bit, just helps a little bit. You will sometimes see some other pharmaceuticals as well if cats are having a little bit more severe behavior issues, and you'll get more information about that when the cat is coming to your foster home. Lowry's going to talk a bit about our paperwork.
Paperwork, everybody's favorite topic. I talked earlier about the need to write up the notes, write up your notes, and I said it was important, and it is. It really is important. With COVID protocols, most people at CAT never ever actually see a cat these days, or they see a very select few. So detailed notes are important for the next person, the next persons that are dealing with a cat, and especially for the adoption counselors. They're the ones marketing the cats to people, so to speak, and they need to know everything possible about that cat because they haven't met the cat typically. It's also important for cats in a foster home for a couple of reasons, but one is that the foster home is kind of mimicking where we want the cats to go eventually. They're going to be adopted into a home, and a foster home is a home. It's not the shelter. And the cats can express their natural domestic behavior, so to speak, once they get out of the shelter. So frequently we see that, Nancy has mentioned this, that cats that have been have some issues in the shelter quickly quiet down or relax or start exhibiting their true selves once they get into the foster home. So it's important to have a record of that, both for the future adopters as well as for the adoption counselor. But also the other thing about having a records for the cats in the foster home is that once they get into the foster home, nobody else knows what's going on about that cat except the foster parents, as if they disappeared from our system. And if the foster parent doesn't talk about how the cat is doing in some way or other, nobody else is able to find out how the cat is doing, including the adoption counselors. So keeping good notes is a way of kind of meeting these situations. In the shelter, there is what's called a behavioral journal that's found in the paperwork of the cat underneath the kennels for every cat, usually at the back of the clipboard. And example of that is the one on the right in the slide. For the foster home, there is also a behavioral journal available, and that's shown on the left. Slightly different look to it because they ask that you do this on a daily basis. Actually, for the shelter cats, we ask anybody who interacts with the cat to do it. So it could be several entries in a day. But for the foster home, there might be a tendency to kind of not worry about it, but we ask that you do worry about it, that you do fill in a bit every day as to how things are going. Also important for the, next slide, please. Also important for the foster information, the foster paperwork, is basically a weekly summary of how things have gone. This is actually on the computer. It's easily available, and it's just a matter of clicking keys on 2 or 3 sheets like this to indicate how the cat is responding to certain standardized situations. And basically it gives the people, well, everybody else besides the foster parents, an update as to how that cat is doing on a weekly basis. So we can see, basically, in essence, it's like a chart or a graph. You can basically see, is the cat responding positively? Has it reached a plateau of behavior, for the particular needs that cat has? Or is it beginning to, its behavior beginning to go downhill again? Maybe it needs some different approach. So this enables people to, the behavior people, staff and so on, maybe the hospital, to begin offer advice or alternatives for what can be done for that cat. So it's very important to fill in on a weekly basis. And they've actually made this extremely easy to fill in because it is just punching a few keys on the keyboard, and that's it. We ask that she use, I guess you could call it descriptive language when you're describing cat behavior in these journals, whether for these handwritten things. For example, say that the cat has pupils dilated, ears flattened to the side, and that's much more informative than just saying the cat is scared. So try to be as specific in the language as you can. If you want to see some, well, most of the dictionary for cat body language uses terms like this, so you can find them there. Look at the weekly form that you send in. The terms are described there as well. So there are plenty of places to do that, to get the information, but try to be as precise as you can. And basically these enable everyone who's dealing with a cat or potentially is dealing with a cat to be on the same page regarding the behavior, to know exactly what's being described. And finally, I'll just say that this whole business of paperwork is a work in progress. It's constantly evolving. And next week it may have changed. Next month, probably for sure, it will have changed. But hopefully it's becoming more and more useful. I'd say definitely it's become more useful than it was even a few months ago. There's quite a bit of progress been made. So anything you can do to help with this, it's really appreciated by everybody. Nancy?
I want to second that. It may change in the next hour. You never know. So, but along that same line, all of CAT's programs improve because of our volunteer input. It's the people who are actually doing it, sharing suggestions that make things better. So please, as you're working with the program and working with the cats, if things aren't working, please let us know. Or if you think of ways that might streamline it or make it better or easier, please let us know that as well. We love your input and feedback. And again, that's how we make things better. So thank you. Our next steps, if you're interested in doing BMOD at the shelter, please contact myself or Terry. Our options are a little bit limited right now because of COVID and social distancing. We're trying to find more places where we can have BMOD people in the building and still keep 6 feet distance between everyone. So we're working on it. So please be patient, but do let us know if you're interested so we can get you started with some training. If you're interested in fostering socialization cats or behavior modification cats, you can contact Mary as well, and she'll get you started in that process. If you have any questions, feel free to email Lowry or myself. Our emails are here on the top of the page, and we're available for questions about the presentation. We're also available for any questions you have regarding a specific cat or next steps or places if you're just struggling or don't know what to do next. We're happy to help. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you helping the socialization and behavior modification cats at the shelter. There is nothing more rewarding than seeing one of these guys that came in so fearful and scared and watching them to thrive in their new homes. So thank you so much for joining the team. We'll look forward to talking to you all soon.